In this episode of the Moon Ridge podcast, it's all about adventure, storytelling, and the kind of lifestyle that starts with a good hat and ends somewhere unforgettable. Today, I'm joined by Todd Martin, owner of the South by Northwest Restaurant Group here in Northwest Arkansas. Todd is a longtime friend, business partner, and avid traveler. Todd has one of the best hat collections I've ever seen, and over the years, he's helped me shape my own appreciation for hats, travel, and telling the stories that come with all of it. In this episode, we dive into Todd's recent adventure to Alaska during the Iditarod, where he spent some time photographing bald eagles in the bays outside of Homer, Alaska. Along the way, we talk photography, wildlife, remote Alaskan towns, Africa scotch, and the best experiences that come from exploring places far from home. It's the kind of conversation that makes you want to grab your favorite hat, book a flight, and go see something new. Welcome to the podcast, Todd Martin. I've got Todd Martin here on the Moon Ridge podcast today, and Todd and his wife Marty are partners of ours and owners of South by Northwest Restaurant Group here in Northwest Arkansas. Also, one of our favorite and first hat customers that we had at Moon Ridge. And one thing I wanted to tell everybody about Todd is a true hat aficionado. He has one of the best hat collections that I know personally and has taught me a lot about what I like. And I actually own a Todd Martin original hat that Natalie took and reshaped.
Yeah, that's an easy way of saying that Todd has way too many hats.
Todd has enough hats that I got one of his hats. So,
it's really easy to, have a hat when you have no hair. So you have to have something on your head. And since I can't style my hair anymore that is anywhere close to having something attractive, buy a good hat. That takes care of the problem. And people immediately think you have hair. They don't think you're bald underneath.
So, Todd, one of the biggest reasons today that you're in here is Moon Ridge is not about just quality hats and having them in the store. It's about a lifestyle and taking those hats on adventures. And you went on quite an adventure lately. You left here and you went up to Alaska and started at the Iditarod, I believe.
I did.
First of all, how did a guy from Arkansas fall in love with getting up there to go to world's biggest sled race?
It was kind of a funny deal. The actual, reason to go was I had an opportunity to go to take pictures with a really preeminent wildlife photographer here in the United States. His name is Christopher Balmer. And Chris operates a wildlife photography shop out of West Yellowstone. And we had run across him last year when Marty and I were up there in Montana and then later in Wyoming. Really impressed, but he takes a small group of people to Alaska every year to take pictures of eagles. And I know that we get an opportunity to take pictures of bald eagles down here in Arkansas occasionally. I've seen some pictures pop up for people that were over at the Buffalo and have gotten some really nice shots of bald eagles. Have to tell you, it's nothing like what was in Alaska. So the opportunity after seeing some of the shots that Chris had made on previous trips, I just had to go. And strikingly enough, it was an anniversary present from Marty. She said, "You need to go." So that's how I ended up there. The happenstance was it was also the start of the Iditarod. So flew up there, landed in Anchorage, got up the next morning, went straight into downtown Anchorage, which is not a far hike, and watched the start of the Iditarod. And it was really a unique thing. And I didn't, and of course, then we followed it for the next 2 weeks after being up there. But it was really exciting.
So, what? Let's back up a little bit and talk about where your love for photography started. So, has that been something you've done for a long time? Did you pick it up later in life? What's the story there? You take some amazing pictures.
Well, thanks. It actually has become something that really only started for me about 12 years ago. And the interesting aspect of it is I actually got hooked on it being in Canada on a fishing trip and had a small camera with me and ran across a few bald eagles. And I was way under equipped to take those pictures. But I got a couple of really great shots I still have today. And I remember that when I walked away with this, the thought process was, sure, there's skill into being a photographer, but sometimes it's just pointing the camera the right place at the right time. And in fact, we had pulled up on shore and there was a bald eagle sitting up in a big evergreen tree. And I had my camera pointed right at him. And at that moment, he launched out full wingspan right at us. And I got the shot. Wasn't good. It was pure luck. I really kind of got hooked on it because of that. It was really astounding. And wildlife photography, landscape photography has been where I have really embraced that. So the last few years, Marty and I headed out once a year or so to really go around the United States, as a matter of fact, more than any place else, and have an opportunity to capture some unbelievable shots. We've been to the Northeast and been leaf peepers. That is a thing. When you go to Vermont, New Hampshire during peak fall foliage, locals call you a leaf peeper.
All right, that is a new term for me. I
It
have
was a
never
new term for
heard
us.
leaf peeper before.
Leaf peeper, I thought, well, that's a cool name. Well, it's not really flattering if you're in Vermont and New Hampshire. That's a leaf peepers because they like our money, but that's about all they like about
I'm
us.
not sure it's flattering anywhere.
You're right. Well, there you go. So
But
now I will tell you, after being in Alaska, I have a new name,
okay, what's that?
eagler.
You're an eagler.
That's right. So I've been a leaf peeper and I've been an eagler.
I think you're graduating as you
I
move
feel
up
like I
in your
got
voyage
promoted.
here.
I do feel like I got promoted. We did have an opportunity last March, though, to go to South Africa and really went out on an expedition and spent, I guess about 5 days out in the bush, so to speak, and got some amazing wildlife shots. Just absolutely amazing. We hunted a big lion for 2 solid days. And I mean, he kept going into this 1,000 acre brushy area and we were not able to get him out. And of course, God said, "Oh no, we can't go in there. We'll walk up on him and he'll kill us." So, plus there's a little thing there, of course, in Africa that you have to deal with called cobras. And I don't like snakes anyway. And you say cobra to me, and I'm like, that's fine. I'll face the lion. I do not want to see a cobra. But this particular lion was one I really wanted a shot of because he was a very rare black maned lion. So the only black maned lion I've ever seen was in The Lion King, and it was Scar, and it was a cartoon. But I really wanted to see the real thing. But we never did. We were never able to get him out in the open.
Sounds like a return trip.
Chris Ballmer takes a lot of people down to South Africa. And he absolutely has told me, "You need to come on my trip. You'll enjoy it immensely," and I'm sure I will. And that's a trip that the timing is always going to be difficult with me because of other commitments.
Back to Alaska here. So you fly in, you land, you go downtown, and you're almost in the middle of the Iditarod, right?
Oh, not almost, in the middle.
You are in the middle of the Iditarod right there. So I think that is something that a lot of people will be familiar with. You may remember this. I sure do, but there was a point in time where the Iditarod was on ESPN, like
Oh yeah.
in the middle of the afternoon or whenever that was. But so what was the most unique thing? We know it's dogs, we know it's on sleds, but there's got to be some unique tradition or what'd you see?
Well, it's really interesting because I'm telling you, downtown Alaska really, or downtown Anchorage really throws out everything for this race. I mean, it is like, I don't even know what to compare it to that we would have here in Fayetteville, but I mean, it's a huge event. And what's striking, of course, we think about Anchorage as a capital city. Anchorage is just not that big of a city. And from that perspective, there were a lot of people downtown. Everything was open, everything was welcoming. I think the most surprising thing I had in on this day, which is technically the start, but it is the honorary start, they have sponsors hopping on the sleds with the mushers and heading down the street. So people got to ride on the initial phase of the sleds. And the official start was actually the very next morning.
Okay.
But what was really interesting, it was quite the party atmosphere. And it was cold and it was snowy and it was everything overcast. It was everything that you would expect Alaska to be. And of course, this was in March. But I think a couple of things struck me. Number one, Marty and I had a Siberian Husky years and years ago. Now we've had labs for 30 years and we have big labs and they're 90 pounds. these dogs are small. They are small dogs. They're not big Malamutes like I thought they'd be, which would be huge dogs. They're not even, a lot of them are not Siberian Huskies. And there's just all kinds of dogs. But I'm telling you, 40, 50 pounds tops. So by what I thought, pulling these sleds and everything for these long distances, I thought, wow, these are small dogs. And of course, they're very athletic, which to me would also translate to they're thin, but they're very athletic. So, it was really interesting. There were, of course, protesters protesting protesting the treatment of the dogs. But there was also a lot of communication about how the animals are cared for and how they're taken care of. And of course, for a musher, if a dog gets sick on the trail, they stop and they're out of the race. If a dog dies on the trail, you're definitely out of the race. So they are incentivized to make sure their dogs are well cared for. It's not that they're really that they're, hurting the animals at all. So the size of the dogs pulling the sleds was one thing that I was very surprised at. The other thing is, wow, the people were super friendly everywhere I was in Alaska. Uh, Anchorage, and then later went on to Homer, Alaska for to go and take pictures of the eagles. And the people just were unbelievably friendly everywhere we went. So much so that there's this little hardware store in Homer named Ulmer's. And Ulmer's is not like a hardware store we have. They're like a hardware store, grocery store, pharmacy, and, whatever else. Walked into Ulmer's. I was looking for a camera battery. And of course, they had it. And it was the second time I'd been in there, and they were very friendly. It was early in the morning, and I got to the checkout line, and I finally said to the young woman that was there, I said, this is my first time in Alaska, and being here in Homer, everybody's just so friendly. And her response to me was, well, we have to be. We see each other every day. And if we weren't friendly to each other, there'd be trouble.
That sounds like a great way of life.
And it's a town of about 6,000 people, but wow, they have a big tourist business in the summer for the area. And of course, the major industry there is fishing. Tons of halibut comes out of there. But it's just an absolute gorgeous landscape. I mean, absolute gorgeous.
What about lodging? Is there a hotel in Anchorage you would recommend, or just kind of
So Anchorage, from that standpoint, is just like pretty much any town.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up staying at the Courtyard because I'm a Marriott guy, had some points, said Courtyard, and it was like in Courtyard you'd be.
There
anywhere.
you go.
Okay. Homer had one hotel called the Land's End, and it was literally at the end of the peninsula. I thought Land's End. I was thinking about Land's End Resort and Land's End in Maine, and no, it's just like it's
the end of the land.
The end of the land. Boom. It's ocean after that.
So Anchorage to Homer, and then from Homer, what comes next? Where are we taking pictures?
A couple of little islands off in the kind of the Gulf and Peninsula, in an area that the locals called Chinapoot. Literally, Poot is how I took it, and that's where it was, Chinapoot. And it was small islands just across the bay, and I mean we broke ice a lot. We had to follow an icebreaker out one morning, had to follow an icebreaker back in a couple of times. And there was one morning we couldn't go out because the ice was too heavy in the harbor. But you're going across literally in, I don't know, a 30-foot, aluminum steel open boat that has a little fishing cabin or a little cabin on the center that you get in, and so you don't freeze to death while you're going across. Because anything you got going across is getting sea sprayed and is freezing while you're going over there. So we went out to these little places, and there were some houses out there, and I guess some resort areas out there that were not occupied, and individual camping residences and stuff. They were really off the grid, and the eagles were everywhere. And when I'm talking about this, to give you a concept of the number, hundreds.
Hundreds.
Okay. And I mean, everything from, and they're all bald eagles. Now you see the juveniles that are, of course, brown up to coming into maturity where they start turning white, but they're, as they would call, dirty bald eagles. And then, the fully mature bald eagles that are just spotless white heads and tails and gorgeous.
I've We definitely have bald eagles in Arkansas, but I
Mhm.
think I've seen two or three at once, max. Most of the time, a single here and there.
Well, it's funny because growing up in South Arkansas, and I grew up on a dairy farm, we always saw. I mean, if you walk out and you see buzzards flying and circling, you think, "Oh crap, something's happened. Got a cow that's down, something." And you'll see, I don't know if it's really bad, 10 to 15 of them. When we got out into places and they were fishing, and we would also bait them a bit because we were carrying some herring with us that we would throw out to attract them in for pictures. It was like that on steroids. I'm talking 20, 30 coming in from every direction, flying in, dropping down into the water, grabbing the fish, taking off. It was that level of numbers. And, just you just didn't get tired of it. It was just amazing to sit back and watch.
So was this just you and sorry, I forgot his name.
Chris Ballmer. Actually, no, it was me, Chris, and one, two, three, four of his best friends, other customers that he takes on the stuff like that. He normally takes six on that trip, and it was, just phenomenal.
So you made some new friends out of the deal.
Made some new friends out of the deal, which was very interesting. Also, another photographer that up there that works with Chris named Kevin Odette, and Kevin, astounding story and an unbelievable photographer in his own right as well. But I mean, yeah, really cool stuff from that standpoint.
What so you go on anything and a group of people, you're going to different places. There has to be a funny story that came out of this whole trip. What do you think the thing
And
that happened to you?
I don't know that, honestly, I don't think there was any funny thing that really happened that I would
All
go back and
business.
say, we were pretty serious about the freaking Eagles. There were a lot of wondrous things that happened. I mean, we pulled up on the beach in one area, and we're taking pictures of eagles. And we have this one that just decides, yeah, I'm going to check you guys out. And we're in this boat, and it has a drop down front. And, a couple of us are laying down taking pictures. So we're flat laying down, and we're not taking the difference between Arkansas taking a picture when you're at 100 yards taking a picture of a bald eagle and hoping he flies in close is we were at 20 feet. And this eagle just came right in. Well, Kevin Odette, the other photographer I was mentioning, had gotten off the boat and was sitting on the ground. And this eagle just kind of, I mean, we're sitting there for 20 minutes taking pictures, and he's moving it around, and he comes over and literally puts his talons on Kevin's boot. He's that close to Kevin. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. He wasn't a bit concerned about us in the least.
Those are some pretty gnarly talons.
Well, Chris got a little bit concerned about that and said, you need to get those talons off your boot because he said they can go right through. And we've got some pictures of them. And I mean, no kidding. They are some serious stuff.
And Todd, you're a Fayetteville guy. You do a lot for this community and own several different establishments around Northwest Arkansas. Were there similarities between Alaska and Arkansas? I know they don't seem very much alike, but was there anything that you said, "Hey, this kind of reminds me of home"?
Strangely, not really.
Really?
I think the differences are stark. I like to think people in Fayetteville are very friendly. People that we ran across, they were just happy and very friendly. And I mean, to a level that I haven't encountered anywhere else, to a point that I'd almost call them carefree. Here's a funny story. I forgot about this.
All right, I knew we'd get one.
Yeah, well, so to set it up, I go anywhere because I've traveled a lot. The one thing I can't stand is being stuck on a bus in a van riding with somebody. I'm going to get a car. So I'm going to Homer. I'm going to get a car. Well, look, Zach, you travel. It's Hertz, Avis, somebody. And I'm a Hertz guy. So try to get up there and get a Hertz car. Got to Anchorage, could check in. I could have gotten a Hertz car. Get to Homer. Well, there's no Hertz. Avis, no Avis. You start looking, what is there? Alaskan Adventure Car Rental. Okay. So I call up to these guys, and really nice guy answers the phone. He's the owner of the place. And I said, hey, look, we're coming up for this. I'd like to be able to get a car. And he said, that's no problem. You want a four-wheel drive? Yep. Want a four-wheel drive. Great. So I got this and this. He said, look, have you ever been to a third world country? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I have. I've been to India, I've been several places in Africa. Yeah, I have. And he said, well, if you go to a third world country and you get on a gravel road and you go to the end of the gravel road after about 15 miles and you come to a spot that there is nothing, that's where Homer is. So I'll get you a car. He did. I got a Toyota FJ Cruiser.
Hey, that's a classic
with 260,000 miles on it.
I don't think they've made those
No, they haven't.
This is one of the cars that always wondered why they quit making. Those were sharp looking cars.
Yeah. So that holes in the seat, but it ran. It had heater, and that was all it needed. I called in at Anchorage. We were delayed a little bit on our flight, and I called the guy and I said, hey, look, we're a little bit delayed. Should be landing there. He said, no problem. He said, when you get to the airport, just walk out. It's going to be this blue FJ Cruiser, and the keys will be in it. I said, you're just going to leave the keys in it? Yeah. He said, nobody's going to steal this thing around here.
They're going to know exactly.
Zach, when I got there and got my bags and I walked out to it, not only were the keys in it, it was running and it was warm.
All right.
So, that was pretty good. But I think that the other part of the story is the rest of the group, they got a van so they could drive everybody around. Well, son of a gun, as things would happen, we're going to breakfast one morning. Going straight, somebody turns in front, clips them in the van. Not me, in the van. It doesn't really do any damage. We call the guy at Adventure Alaska Car Rentals. He comes out. It has bent the fender into the passenger front wheel. And he looks at it and he says, I got this. He goes over and gets a sledgehammer and starts beating on the thing. Of course, it's bent worse than that, so it won't do anything to it. And I'm sitting there. He said, hey, man, pull that FJ Cruiser over here. He goes in and he gets a chain, hooks up to the FJ Cruiser and says, now back it up. And we bent the fender back so we could keep on going down the road. And that was it.
That is some Alaskan ingenuity.
I'm telling you, he wasn't worried about it. That's no big deal.
I have a similar story in Churchill, Canada, when I was up there seeing the polar bears. And we rented a car from Canada Adventures, let's call it.
There you go. The Canadian version of these guys.
The Canadian version of these guys, the keys were also in the truck, and it was a Toyota. It had 200 and something thousand miles. It was the one rental car in town. They tossed you the keys and said, yeah, you can drive out there and get as close as you're crazy enough to be to look at the polar bears. And, if you don't bring the truck back, we're going to be in big trouble because that's the only rental car in town. So I've had a remote.
You've had that same experience.
I've had the remote rental car experience. As far as traveling to Alaska, so you and I do a lot of traveling, but there's a lot of things that come natural to us that somebody that hasn't done a lot of traveling, it may not be familiar with. Is there a tip or a trick or anything that you would recommend if somebody is looking to go to Alaska for the first time?
Well, interestingly enough, I think that what I ran into when I said I'm going to Alaska, everybody going on a cruise, because I know that's a lot of what people do. And personally, I'm not a cruise person. This is the type of Alaskan trip that I would go on and I would do again. I think that really and truly what it comes down to me is the simple facts that I would encourage you if you're traveling long distance to anybody. Go with as few stops and connections as you can make. I looked at it at several different ways. We're in Fayetteville. I was going to fly to Atlanta where I could go direct to Anchorage, or I was going to fly to Dallas and connect through someplace and go up to Anchorage. And they were not going to be on super comfortable first class type airline flights, be more standard from that standpoint. So it's a long haul to get up there without any doubt. The trip over, I went to Dallas through LA and then into Anchorage from that standpoint. It was fine from that perspective, but try to minimize the connections as much as possible. On the way back, it was Anchorage straight to Dallas and then into Fayetteville, which I'd love to tell you was better than the stop, but in that case, it wasn't. The flight was just long, and I did take a red eye back, which I normally do not do. It was time to come home, and that was the best choice to get home.
That is great advice
No.
because it's easy to say, yeah, this is $100 cheaper to take an extra leg, but it
Mm.
is not. Where I would say probably $500 is where I would draw the line and say, yeah, I'll go ahead and take that extra stop over. But it really is a lot of times not worth it for just a little bit of money.
You're exactly right. And shockingly, is as big as we think about LA and LAX, it's not the best place to actually have a layover either.
It is the worst airport in, I will say, the US, if not the world.
Now, remember, Kansas City just built a new one, so they did come off the
It's
bottom of the list.
it
So they
is
did come
Kansas City.
off
I'm
on.
I'm giving Kansas City grace because their new terminal is open, but especially coming out of Northwest Arkansas, you can catch a direct flight to LA, but you land in central LA.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I told you wrong. I said I went Dallas to LA. That was wrong. I was originally going Dallas to LA, and then I caught the LA direct flight. So it was because I wanted to do one hop, LA and then up. And then I basically did the Dallas and back. So it worked out.
You
Of
want
course, you were going to Anchorage anyway, and then I was going to have to go on to Homer.
you want a long day fly from here to LAX, but then when you get to LAX, you got to get on a bus to get to
Oh,
the
yeah.
main terminal. Then you're in the main terminal. You go out of LAX, then you have to stand in line to get on the Uber parking lot, which they pack. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. They pack every type of humanity, every single one of them that sweats, uh, into these buses. Then they bus you another 2 miles to the Uber lot. So it's about an hour and 45 to get from your plane to your Uber. And then wherever you go, getting out of the airport, you're going to spend another 30, 45 minutes in traffic.
So
So
you've actually flown to LA and then had to go into LA. I've never done that. I've always been in the airport or I've left. I've driven into LA and caught the flight out.
I just go to Dallas, go to Phoenix, fly into Orange County, spend your
Something
time
else,
down
yeah.
in Laguna Beach or Huntington Beach, skip downtown
Well, I
LA
am
and
going to
Hollywood.
San Diego next week.
Great
So
town.
yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
All right, kind of wrapping up here. I do have one more question for
Okay.
you. What is next on your bucket list? We've mentioned Africa and Alaska. So what's next? We're all excited to hear.
That's a good question. Marty and I have spent the last 2 years going out to Montana, Wyoming in June and spent a lot of time out there. We've gotten some beautiful pictures. We just love it. I mean, again, the scenery is gorgeous and it's a lot of fun. We're looking at that this year. We're currently booked to go out there again, but we're probably going to condense it down just from some additional things that we've got going on. We are headed to Italy this fall. That's a Marty trip. So going to be a little bit different. I don't know that I'll have to pack all the camera stuff. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I'm going to find the kind of wildlife that I want to see yet, but hey, it's Italy. How bad can it be? After that, the real bucket list trip for me, I do want to go back to Africa, but instead of South Africa, I really want to go to the Serengeti. So Tanzania and Kenya. And we're working on a few options in with that. But the real bucket list trip for me is Scotland. Have not been to Scotland. I've spent time in London and in the UK, in southern UK, but I want to go to Edinburgh and I want to go to the Highlands and I want to spend about 10 days touring distilleries and becoming sober when I leave.
Well, we have done Scotland, and I can tell you it is real high up on the places I wish I'd had more time at. And my recommendation for you and anybody that does go there is make sure you plan enough time to spend in country and doing what you're talking
Mhm.
about, getting out and going to the distilleries. And the Highlands isn't near anything.
Yeah.
You need 3 or 4 hours to get into the Highlands, and that's not a day trip. It's a multi-day trip.
Yeah, so we've technically looked at an itinerary on that. We the year that we went to Africa, we were really considering Scotland first, and then Africa kind of popped up for us. Um, we're thinking 10, 12 days minimum on a trip like that, with probably an initial start in Edinburgh and then working probably two additional stays across that 12-day period.
Yeah, you're gonna love it.
So
You get up
it'll be a lot of fun.
get up to Inverness and
And even Marty, strikingly enough, said, "Okay." Last time I pulled out a scotch and poured a glass, she said, "Okay, pour me one too." I said, "Can't waste this one. No, come on, I'm going to drink it." She wants to get into understanding scotch, and I thought, okay, this could be the thing. This could be the thing.
well, I can tell you there's a lot of more exotic scotches out there than Johnny Walker, but
Yes, there are.
the Johnny Walker tasting room that's in downtown Edinburgh. It's on the 8th or 10th floor of the Johnny Walker store. On the balcony, there is a photo shot of the Castle of Edinburgh that's up on the hill right in front of you with the Scottish flag and the Union Jack. And it is an incredible photo. So when you're there, you'll have to get that one.
Definitely will have to get that one, no doubt.
Well, Todd, thank you for joining the Moon Ridge podcast today. You truly emulate what we're looking for in a lifestyle that is our friends, wears our hats, spends time with it, business partners, all the above. And so I know you're a busy man, and to have this time to talk about your trips is a true honor. And just thanks for being on.
Man, thank you. It's always great to have a visit.